In the Bible, Paul explains that everyone has two bodies, a physical body and a spiritual body. Mediums use their spiritual bodies when they act as a communication bridge between the physical and spirit worlds. As a spirit speaks, mediums hear the information using the ears of their spiritual bodies, then repeat the information to other physical people. Mediumship is synonymous with the biblical term gifts of the Spirit. The focus of our show, Making Known the Unknown, is to provide knowledge through the use of Reverend Hewitt's mediumship and Sidney Schwartz's research. The Bible contains the history of psychic events, along with man-made doctrines created by priests centuries ago. This show will explore the untruths which the Bible entrenched into our society. By uncovering these untruths, we encourage people everywhere to think for themselves with a critical mind.
Hello, and welcome to Making Known the Unknown. I'm your host, Tina Tarryk, and with me are the foundation and the experts of the show, Sidney Schwartz, middle school teacher from Hackensack, New Jersey.
Hi, Tina.
And Bible researcher of how many years, Sidney?
Oh, way over 20.
Way over 20 years.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hi.
And Reverend Carl Hewitt, founder and pastor of Gifts of the Spirit Church in Chesterfield, Connecticut, and medium. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you.
And how long have you and Sidney known each other?
Since 1970. He's the probably the oldest student that I've ever had putting up with me because I don't tolerate anyone unless they have an open mind. I kick them out. In other words, I kick them off of God's holy wagon.
Okay.
If they don't tolerate, open their mind and think for themselves, I get rid of them.
So for our viewers who are new to this type of program and exactly how it is that the two of you work together, how would you both explain what you do?
Well, number one, I want people to have an open mind and think for themselves because you see, God gave us all a brain, gave us a mind, and there's so many people that don't use that. You see, they have a question or something, they don't think it out themselves. And whether it's dealing with spirituality or what, you know, they go to somebody with a collar around as if they have all the answers. And I always said they don't have all the answers. Like when I was a kid, I'd ask questions such as, why do they say amen at the end of a prayer? And my father used to scold me because I would ask such questions and that. And I said, I want to know. I got all my answers because Jesus said, ask and you shall receive. And he also said, you know, know you the truth and it will set you free. I really feel I've been set free, so that's me. And I wanted everybody else that I know to be set free. And with him, he got so aggravated at me at times, I thought he'd walk off of a long pier into the deep water, but he never did. And so he's become a fabulous knowledgeable man dealing with the Bible. His mother hates my guts, or she did for a while, but she's got kind of gentle with me now.
So if somebody were to see the two of you, you're a teacher,
Right.
Sidney, and a Bible researcher, and you're a medium. Most people would think that's a very odd combination, yet it really works.
That's because the Bible is a history book of psychic phenomena. It's a book of mediumship. And when you understand how the gifts of the Spirit work, or psychic science, and you start reading the Bible, you see all sorts of evidence of the procedures or how it needs to happen still recorded in the Bible. So therefore, the two of them blend quite well.
Okay. You said gifts of the Spirit. A gift of the Spirit, for example, would be many that you possess as a medium with clairvoyance and clairaudience.
You know, the thing that shocks me so much, Tina, is when I say Gifts of Spirit Church. Oh, that's the work of the devil. But yet Jesus taught this. Mm-hmm. And after he died, he used Saul his name was changed to Paul, and he was canonized by the Catholic Church. He is canonized as a saint later on, and he was used as Jesus' medium. In other words, Jesus had to have a medium after he died in order to continue his teachings.
Okay.
And so on the road to Damascus, when he was hired, I'm talking about Paul now,
Okay.
he was hired to go to Damascus to arrest all of those people that were the followers of the religion who had now worshiping Jesus. This is not too long after he died, you know. And because they were not worshiping the priest, not giving him any money, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And so the priest sent him to arrest these people, you know, get them back in the fold again. And Jesus, in the other dimension, saw what was happening, and he scared the daylights out of him by appearing as that highly evolved entity as he was, and by appearing in front of him, because he could do that with that tremendous light within his own body, which is the auric field. And so therefore he appeared to him brighter than the sun. This is where that light comes from.
See, and that experience was so intense for Paul that it totally changed his life and inspired him to go on and teach.
Sure.
And this is why Paul said in 12 Corinthians chapter 1, and I'm going to quote the Beck Bible because of the way it's worded. It says, "Fellow Christians, I want you to know about the gifts of the Spirit." So people who claim that the gifts of the Spirit is the work of the devil obviously don't understand that it was the basis of Christianity for its first 3 years.
That's right.
Then at the Council of Nicaea or the Council of Constantinople in either 325 or 379, at one of those councils, the priests got together and decided they no longer wanted gifts of the Spirit practiced in the Christian churches, and they took mediumship out, and they replaced the mediums with their priests. The priests weren't gifted, and that's where the sermons and everything evolved. But before that, it was mediums who were giving clairvoyant messages and lectures from the spirit world all throughout Christianity.
So in essence, Carl, you receive information from the spirit world, and Sidney researches that information and ties it up with what's going on in the Bible or the Bibles.
Exactly.
Or other historical
Okay.
documentation, yes.
And together, the two of you have traveled the world
Yes,
to share this knowledge.
exactly.
Not beliefs, but knowledge,
Giving
right?
it away.
Okay. Giving it away.
You
Yeah.
got
Okay,
it.
all
Giving
right.
it away.
Now, one of the products of that research and the collaboration together is your first book,
That's right.
My First Encounter with an Angel, Revelations of Ancient Wisdom.
This entity appeared to me because the entities on the other side, the ascended masters, know what we are doing. This is why they appear to us. This entity scared the daylights out of me. But when I finally calmed down and decided to do the work he wanted me to do, and then Jesus appeared to me too. Why do you think he appeared to me? A lot of people think this is a joke. This isn't a joke. I wanted to know why he didn't appear to the Pope, or why didn't he appear to somebody that was really somebody, supposedly on this planet. He's been talking to me for a long, long time.
So one of these great ascended masters came through you, and you produced this book.
That's
Yes.
right.
This first book.
That's right.
I understand, and this will get into the topic of today's show, which is the greatest story never told,
Never told.
that there is another entity of whose name we are not allowed to use for trademark violation
Right,
purposes,
Right.
who the two of you have been in the presence of
Yeah.
and experienced for many, many years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, this entity, of course, who shall remain nameless for the purpose of this show, well, I'm not even going to take it from there. I'm going to let you describe this because I have a basic understanding, but the two of you have really experienced this in depth. So what I'm going to ask first is how, and either one of you can jump in with this, how you first heard of the existence of this particular entity doing what they were doing.
Well, I'm connected with this entity and to a certain degree. And I'll have to go back with this story.
Okay.
I was told back, a long time ago, that this entity would cross my path in my lifetime, and it was very powerful to the point that over the years I got to the point I did not believe that this could happen. but it did happen. I assure you, it did happen. And so there was a time after Gifts of the Spirit Church was organized, and then I had some students, Sidney was one of them, and things were going along well. I felt confident that I could go on tour and teach, and I was doing that. I traveled through the South and a lot of other places, all over New England and everything else, and I was happy doing this because I was getting bored in the same place. And I was working all over the South and that type of thing. And so I was, had come back home. I was working in the area, and one day I got a phone call for some people that crossed my path from Palm Beach. I mean, here was the very wealthy families down there that I was getting involved with, you know, in the readings. And these people sent me a videotape. They said, "We've sent you a videotape. We'd like for you to view this, and if you think this is the real thing, please call us and tell us." Well, the next day the tape came in, and I viewed it, and I backed it up and viewed it again, and I backed it up and viewed it for the third time. Then I called them up and I said, "You know, I think this is the real thing, but to see what I'm looking for, I have to be there and see it in person, because the cameras are not picking up what I'm looking for. The camera does not pick up the auric field, the light. I'm looking for the light around the medium."
Okay.
And they said, "Well, we could work that out." And they said, "We'll find out where the medium is going to be the next time, and we would like to have you come and meet us there. We'll pay all your expenses and everything. We'll be in touch with you." And a few weeks went by, and they contacted me again and said she is going to be in Tampa, and they got me first class tickets to Tampa, and I was to meet them at Orlando. And so I met them in Orlando, and at the last minute the husband couldn't come, but the wife came and a lot of other friends, and then there was 2 or 3 cars, you know, a whole line of cars had come along, and got to the airport there. She says, "Would you be kind enough to drive the car?" She says, "I'm not used to driving the car, but would you?" I said, "Of course I can drive." It was a big, heavy Cadillac. And this was in '86.
Okay.
And it was Mother's Day weekend. I'll never forget that. And as we were approaching the airport at Tampa, and all these big high-rise buildings there, something happened. I'll never forget it as long as I live. Huge, tall buildings. It was a calm day, a beautiful, beautiful day. And the event was to start at 10 o'clock that morning, and I had come in at 8:30 that morning. And so as we were approaching the buildings, say the buildings on the right, there was buildings on the left, but we had 1 block to go, turn right, and turn another right, and then we were at the Holiday Inn, which was where the event was to take place, the largest ballroom in the area. And but just approaching the tallest buildings there, the wind, now this is hard for anyone to believe, but this is a God's truth. The wind at that point was so strong, it stopped the Cadillac. Now, if anybody had ever told me this, I wouldn't have believed a word of it, but I was driving that car, and I had my foot on the gas, and it was as if the car was against a brick boulder or a big boulder in the road. It would not move. It was stopped dead still. And it was dead still for several seconds, and then it finally started moving. Well, the owner of the car panicked. People in the back panicked, because I kept thinking of those big plate glass windows coming out of those buildings, you know. What could they have done, you know? And finally, the wind ceased and the car started moving ahead. So we went around the building, finally got into that parking lot, and by the time we got into the lobby, the place was packed. It was sold out. There was 2,200 people in that audience. And everybody in those cars behind us was asking us, "What happened? What was wrong with the car?" Well, what could we tell them? We just simply say, It wouldn't move at that moment. We didn't know what to say. And so finally everybody was seated in there, and my seat was, let's say this is the stage here, and the seating was like, the auditorium was set up way back up there, and my seat was way, way over there, the last seat. And so this woman came out of the anteroom here. She came up on the stage and had a talk with us. Well, my hostess was sitting here, and she asked me, she says, what, do you see the woman, I mean, does she look any different? Does you see a light around her body? And I said, yeah, but she looks like a medium to me. I can tell the light, but I says, not anything special. But when she got through talking and went into the anteroom for the entity to take over her body, when the door opened and this entity came out, I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was like going from a 25-watt bulb to a 1,000-watt bulb.
Okay, I'm going to interject just a little bit here so that our viewers don't get lost.
Good.
You were advised by people in Palm Beach who were friends of yours, and in fact they paid for your trip, to check out a medium.
Right.
They'd sent you videotapes, but you really couldn't see what you wanted to see. What you're talking about is the light around them, because that's how you can tell.
Right.
A woman came out.
Right, the medium.
In this crowd, the medium.
Yeah.
But it didn't look like anything unusual to you.
That's right.
This woman went away.
Right.
Now, did the woman come back out again?
Yes, she went in to meditate for him to come in and take over the body.
So a man,
an ascended master took over her body.
Now, people hear possession, and I know we don't really have a lot of time to get into this, but you know, people think things like having to be, what's the word I'm looking for?
I know what you're going to say.
And I can't think of for some reason. Yeah, being exercised when somebody is possessed. But maybe you could explain a little bit, Sidney, what this really means.
If someone were possessed, that means the spirit comes in and it doesn't leave. That's not really a positive thing. We're talking about the gift of trance. In the gift of trance, the medium spirit leaves his or her body, and another spirit comes in to temporarily live in that body, use that body, and use the vocal cords to speak. And in this case, with this particular medium, he used the whole body. The medium walks and talks and can eat and drink, and you can hardly realize it's another person unless you see the medium in her natural state, because the two of them look very different. Since he's masculine, she takes on very masculine features and mannerisms. I'd like to read from the Bible, if I could, because they talk about the gift of trance in here, where King Saul, as soon after he was an ordained king, he became a medium, and Samuel told him that he would go to a certain town. And then he says in verse 6 of chapter 10 of the first book of Samuel, he says, "Then the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you mightily, and you shall prophesy with them," meaning the other prophets, "and shall be changed into another man." Being changed into another man means that he would go into trance, and the spirit would be speaking through King Saul's body, and he'd be very different than he would be in his natural state. Just like this entity goes into this woman's body, this male entity goes into this woman's body, the voice deepens, takes on very physical, masculine mannerisms, and provides these absolutely fabulous teachings of information that this woman has no knowledge of.
Okay, so the average person looking at this would only notice the difference if they knew this person before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Her mannerisms and her habits, versus what she looked like after she was
It's the same when Carl goes into trance. When Carl goes into trance, if anyone listens to Carl talk and the rest of the program, they will hear him say, "Well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that." He drops his G's. He doesn't say his G's in his normal state. But when he's in trance, he's doing this and doing that. The G's are very pronounced, and you can always tell someone else is speaking through him when the G's are there.
And this is nothing for anyone to be afraid of?
No.
Of course not.
Okay. Because a lot of people do associate this with evil, the devil, and of course that's because they just don't know. But that's okay, because we are going to explain to them how this happens. And
religions all over the world do not want people to know the truth about this, because if they did, they will not need religions. All they need to know is the truth.
Okay.
Read 28th chapter of, what is it?
Samuel?
Samuel.
You mean the woman of Endor?
The woman of Endor.
Well, Saul went to see the woman of Endor because he was being attacked, and she went into trance, and Samuel spoke through her, And
This is a king now, a king.
Okay.
And he needed a reading, but excuse me, but before this time, he had all the mediums destroyed, but there was the people, you know, the natives of the area, they protected their mediums. In this case, there's one medium in the area that they protected. They made sure that she had food and she had everything she wanted because they needed her.
Okay.
And in this case, the king got up one morning and he went to the window to see what kind of a day it was had. But he looked out the window, and out there in the open space, the Philistine armies had come and camped out there in the night, and there were his enemies. He panicked, running all over the mansion, asking all of his help, all of his people.
Seek me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servants, who happened to be Abner, and Abner's mother was Zephaniah, who happened to be the medium, said to him, "Behold, there is a woman who is a medium in Endor." And so he disguised himself, and they went at night, and he said to her, "Conjure up for me, please, and bring up for me him who I shall name to you." This Bible gets changed a lot in these different Bibles. I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible. And the interesting thing is that Saul came. So she goes into trance. And Saul says, "What do you see?" And this Bible says, "I see a divine being coming up out of the earth."
Now let me explain that. A spirit that takes over a person, if they use ectoplasm from the medium, it looks as if it's coming out of the ground. But ectoplasm starts down here and it builds up, just as it did side of Jesus when Moses and Elijah, when the two clouds built right side of him up in the mountain, on the Mount of Transfiguration, that's what happened.
Okay.
Here, they're trying to make it sound as if it's coming out of the ground.
Okay.
You see?
Okay.
They try to make people think that hell is down there. What a bunch of garbage.
And the actual Hebrew says that Elohim, they saw Elohim, and Elohim's another way for saying God. Now Jesus taught God is spirit in John 4:24, and here it is in the Old Testament where the Spirit's coming up, and the Hebrew calls it God. It doesn't always get into the English that way, but that's what the Hebrew says. So Samuel, who was in spirit form, now speaking through the woman, tells Saul that he's going to die the next day, and of course that comes to happen.
So what's happening here is nothing unusual than what has been happening for thousands of years.
What's happened in biblical times still happens today.
Okay.
Psychic phenomena hasn't changed over the course of centuries.
All right. And I'm sure people weren't necessarily fearful then, and it's in the Bible.
Right.
So why would people have a negative reaction? But of course, that's not really what this particular seminar was about. This was because people wanted to see this phenomenon, I'm guessing. That's why people were drawn to this entity. And,
Long time ago, before certain people found out that there was a lot of money in sins and a lot of money in religions, it was a natural thing to go to the gifted person to find out about their crops, about their animals, about their family, about tomorrow. It was a natural thing. But today they made the devil and all of that garbage. There's no such thing as the devil. There's no such thing as hell. There is such a thing as forever. The soul that is within us is recorded. The body that we have, the second body, the spirit body, continues to live whether you want to or not. I don't care who that person is. I don't care if that person is an SOB. They still live afterwards.
okay.
I don't care who it is.
So now this...
And you have to solve your own problems, too. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
there.
that's okay. I think that's a valuable point.
Getting back to my story there, in this great big arena there at the Holiday Inn, when this entity went up on the stage, it didn't go up on the stage like a little woman, went on the stage like a man, and I'm telling you, like a whirlwind up there. And when he got to talking, it was a man's voice coming out of the woman's body.
Really?
Oh, it was unbelievable.
Okay.
And he went for almost close to 3 hours. I timed him, close to 3 hours. And then had a break. I think it was 37 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. And then went back another 3 hours. And then when he left to go back through the anteroom.
Before you talk about that, why don't you describe the light around him?
Around him?
Yes.
I thought I did in the beginning.
No, you didn't. You talked about the light around her. You never spoke about the light around him.
Oh, the light around him, when he came into the room, the whole room filled up with light. The whole room.
The whole room.
I mean, it was just like, there's no way I can describe it.
Have you ever seen any mediums that did that before?
Never.
Okay.
It was the only one I've ever seen in my life that filled up the whole room. It was just like one massive sun, and that light penetrated everything in the room. Everything. So anyway, when that person, when he gave everybody a break, well, in order to rest the body, he went back in the anteroom to leave the body. But as he approached the door, he turned, and I turned to my hostess and said to her, starting to say to her, "This is genuine, 199%. I've never seen anything like it in my life." And just as I was about to say life, I felt this hand grab my arm. It wasn't a woman's hand. It was a powerful hand that grabbed my arm.
Okay.
And the other hand was going right down this way. Turn around this way so the camera gets it. This hand like this, and the other hand went right down like this. Down like this. It would all happen so fast. I couldn't even believe it. And he was talking to me. And now this is a man's voice coming out of this
Okay.
woman's mouth.
Okay.
And what he was saying, the only word that I recall was teacher. But all these people around me, and I do remember this engineer from Cape Canaveral. He was sitting right behind me.
Yep.
And he and another engineer sitting over here. They couldn't get seats together. Nobody would trade with them. And both of them are yanking all the time in the beginning about spending on this money coming there to see this actress. That's what they call it, an actress.
Okay.
And but they changed their mind. They weren't talking like that anymore. And so everybody, after this event, after this knighting me, is what everybody said, I got knighted.
Okay.
Everybody came over and wanted to hug me. All these strangers wanted to hug me. And so it was I can't describe it.
So this great medium essentially
Well, this meeting
calls you a teacher now.
Yeah, teacher.
Okay, all right.
But you see, this entity saw the light around me. You know that old expression, it takes one to know one?
Yeah.
Well, so a medium can see the light around another medium. This
Okay.
is why they could go right through the crowd.
Okay.
Now, this medium from the door way, way over there went right through the crowd. Didn't pay any attention to anybody else. And this has happened many, many times with others, but this is the most powerful one I've ever seen.
The entity that knighted him also later on would refer to him as man of God, which is another name for a medium, such as seer, oracle, man of God.
Really?
They're all interchangeable.
Okay. Now, Sidney, did you meet this entity?
Yes.
Have you been in the presence of this entity?
Yes, I have many times.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience?
Well, what happened with me is that as we've been talking about, there are many organizations that do want to put mediumship down and not have the message come out. This entity got quite a bit of attention, and at one point, some newscasts did a interview or an expose on this particular entity. And it's quite remarkable that you can really take some videotape and edit it to make it seem any way you want to. And this whole story that I saw, which I have videotaped in my collection someplace in my home because I have lots of videotapes, was extremely negative. And I could not see how any spirit could be on the positive side of the spectrum and be saying these kinds of things. So I got very turned off by what I saw. And Carl kind of baited me. He said, "Come, there's going to be a an event and it's during one of your vacations, come out, I'll pay your way. And they said, if you don't think it's genuine by the time you leave, if you think it's genuine, you'll pay me the money. And so sure enough, we went out, and sure enough, it totally changed my mind. I mean, when you got close to the medium and looked into the eyes were like on fire. I've never seen the iris, I've never seen anything like it. It was just unbelievable.
Excuse me, let me correct you. I said, I'm paying your way. You bring a blank check. And within 2 days after we're there, you pay me. But I says, if it's not genuine, don't worry about it. We went out there, and we didn't even discuss it. He just wrote out this check and gave it to me, just like that.
Now, okay, so we've established that this medium is none like you've ever seen before with this huge light. It's a man in a woman's body. But what is so special about this? Why are people, it sounds like in the thousands, flocking to see this entity?
Because it's not just Aunt Tilly who's speaking through this medium. It's an ascended master who has a large body of information and teachings to bring forth that like I've never heard.
I got to
Okay.
say, I'm hearing somebody. Somebody's reminding me. I got to get rid of it right now.
Okay, go ahead.
You'll know who this is. The Catholic Church sent a priest out there. I can't remember his name. I know he's known there by the entity calls him Father. He's a big, tall guy. I have never heard anyone speak in my life like this man. You could hear a pin drop. 2,000, 3,000 people in the audience when he speaks. They sent him out there to see if this was real and to bring a report back. He went and to check it out, and he sent a letter of resignation back to...
Are you kidding me?
I'm telling you the truth. He knows that to be true.
That's right.
And he never went back to Rome. He's a citizen in this country now.
Oh.
But to hear him speak, God, you could hear a pin drop. I love to hear that man speak. He was an advisor to the Pope. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's the most wonderful speaker I have ever heard. He knows that book back and forth and sideways.
Right.
I'm telling you, I love to hear that man speak. What an education he has.
So there must have been something about what this entity was sharing, and I'm sure there's
Sharing.
volumes of it, that kept people coming there and continue to, I'm guessing, right?
He knows more about Jesus, about his life, than anyone on the planet. He told us that Jesus was married. He told us who his wife's name was, about his 2 children, and everything. And he says how the church destroyed all his information and everything.
Isn't there also something special about this entity? I heard something like this entity that is in this woman's body is 25,000 years old? Is that
More
true?
than that.
34,000.
Close to 34,000.
34,000.
34,000 years
And
old.
he told us many things, many things that we don't know. And he told us about what's happening right here on this planet now. He told us some things that's already happened on this planet. He told us several things that has already happened on this planet. This is why scientists, there was 12 scientists that went there to test. This is why I have waited 7 years for this story. You know, remember I said to you, I have a story to tell, and the only reason I wanted to tell this, the great story that has never been told, the greatest story that's never been told, this is it. There's 12 scientists that came to this country. They came there with the most sophisticated equipment in the world, and they tested this person. They tested this person on every level, and their computer equipment went right off the chart, every bit of it. They have never, ever tested anybody on the planet like this. And they went out of there with all of this equipment, but they promised the medium before they left that every bit of this would be known to the public the world over. Not one tiny bit of it has been released to the public, not one. And just about a month ago, I heard from 2 sources, my people, that it was sold.
Okay, so wait a minute. Scientists were there to check out whether this entity was fake or not.
They hooked her up to all sorts of...
And she succumbed to that. She allowed that to
Yes.
happen.
First of all, they tested her in her natural state.
Okay.
They tested her as he entered the body. That's when everything went off the chart. Everything went off the chart.
In other words, they were monitoring her heart rate, her blood pressure, all these kind of metabolic things that they were measuring. And the scientists did say, because there was a video made of it that was shown on local TV out where this entity lives, and we were able to get a copy of that tape, and they actually said that it's physically impossible because there was 8 different things they were looking at, and all 8 things moved. All of these 8 different things moved, and it was physically impossible for anyone to alter all 8 of them at once.
Wow.
So that it showed that she definitely wasn't faking it. They couldn't exactly prove that it was an ascended master, but they knew that it was some outside force that was taking over her body, a spirit taking over her body, because nobody else could change that much in of the human metabolic rates.
Not an actress, though.
They've tested other mediums, and never once could they get anyone that powerful. Never once. Never once. They tested her over and over again. They got IBM to come in there with their most sophisticated computers, because the first ones, they thought maybe there was something wrong with them. IBM got into the picture. Same thing.
And this was when? When was she tested?
About 7 years ago.
About 7 years ago.
7 years ago. I've been waiting 7 years because I was in touch with her the same time. I've been in her house. I'm a friend of hers. And I told her, I said, if I were you, I wouldn't do it unless I had it in black and white, that they would release it to the world. To the world.
I haven't heard anything about it.
See? Nobody else has.
Why was that?
Why? Because there's a lot of money in that type of thing. It's a big cover-up. Big cover-up. I heard recently that it was sold. I mean, it was sold from by the scientists for $1 million a piece. It was 12 of them. So each one of them could have gotten $1 million for all that information.
So they're asked to keep quiet.
That's right.
And not share this information.
That's right.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
A lot of listeners out there, viewers of this program, they'll figure out why.
I know, but I want to hear you say it.
I won't say it. I'm not going to say it.
You're not going to say it?
No.
Okay.
We live in a very ignorant world. It's terrible we'd have to live this way.
I'm guessing that it would mean that religion would have to shut down.
Just like the voice of Spirit said about him. They don't want him to come back. If he comes back, and I'm repeating myself, if he comes back, they would want to put him in the White House, and donations would stop. Our society would change. What would happen?
However, I understand that there are continuously still thousands of people, not just in the United States, but around the world, that know of this entity and have experienced and been in the presence of this entity?
They have traveled from many different countries out to this country to be in his presence, yes.
Now, regardless of whether those 12, this is what I'm thinking, those 12 scientists were able to release that information or didn't want to, or were sold out, or they sold out, I should say, there is a good possibility, wouldn't you say, that there are many, many other people in the world who are experts and can tell whether this is real or fake?
There's a lot of people that know the truth about this. I met people from Australia, from South Africa. I met some wonderful people from Poland. There was one man that was sitting beside of me, just like I was sitting here and he was sitting there, from Poland, couldn't speak a word of English. Wonderful, wonderful person. And I met some wonderful people. I met 2 nuns that sat side of me from somewhere in Australia. We corresponded for quite some time.
Now, I understand that this person used to also travel all over the place.
Just to clarify, when a group of people comes from a different country, they often hire a translator, and as the entity speaking, the translator translates and transmits, so they have an earpiece and transmits it so the foreign person can understand what's going on in their language.
Okay. So every effort is made to
Right.
communicate with whomever's
Right.
there. And my understanding is, too, at one point that this entity started to travel throughout the United States,
Yes, and
but then no longer does.
No,
No.
Can you tell me something about that, Carl? You have some experience there?
Well, this time that they went to London, and there was so many people from all over the world that went to London, and then the next event, that is the next, let's say the next program in London, it was free. I mean, pick up the program, you could tell when it was going to be the next event, and the next event was right there in New York by the airport, and one of my people who was really from this city right here and wanted me to go, and I says, no, Spirit's telling me it'll be canceled. Oh, it can't be canceled, it's sold out. Every hotel is full, you know, and I says, I'm not going with you, I'm sorry, I can't waste my time. And he was peeved at me because I wouldn't go, and I says, I'm not going, I'm not gonna waste my time, drive down there for nothing. And so, because I wouldn't go, he couldn't get a hotel room because I waited too long. So he left at 3 o'clock in the morning to go down, and 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon, he came back and he stood in the doorway of my office, and I said, what about the tent? He slumped forward and he says, my God, nothing passes you, does it? I said, tell me about the tent. And he said, everything was canceled, just like you said. I said, but tell me about the tent. And he said, well, this would have been the 5th time that the medium had been here. But last weekend, the medium went to London and scheduled to be in New York this week. And when they got back here, some reason or other, the staff at this hotel knew everybody in this group coming here, the medium and everybody else, and all of a sudden this hotel was bussed 10 miles away to another hotel, and the help there was bussed back over here. And he said they set up a big, huge tent out in the parking lot in the back of the building.
they had padlocked the ballroom so they couldn't get in.
Yeah, they padlocked the ballroom. And so some of the staff met the medium at 10:30 that night, because all the staff had to be there and get everything ready. And they said, we don't know what's wrong, because the new man, she said, well, I'll find the manager. They said, the manager's not there, it's a new manager. So she didn't understand what was going on. She got there, nobody knew anything. Couldn't get into the ballroom, even though it was paid in advance.
Right.
So that one weekend in London, everybody got scared. They didn't even want any more of this exposure. So that weekend was when that medium was to be assassinated.
Assassinated?
Absolutely. It was a huge, huge tent. And the outskirts of the tent, the outer walls of the tent, was clear plastic. And that was where I was told by Spirit that she was to be assassinated in that tent. Because my friend, my student from this city, went in, he told me that he went into the tent and sat down and meditated for about an hour. I said, anybody else go in there with you? He says, no. This is in November. And he said that artificial turf was on the floor, and he said they had electric heaters in there. So it's all brand new stuff, brand new tent, brand new everything. And he said, it was all set up. He said the biggest tent he'd ever seen.
I once went to Sacred Heart University in Bridgeport, or Fairfield, Connecticut, and to use their library, because there was a certain Bible there I wanted to research. And as I was walking to the library, they happened to have a tent set up that had clear plastic walls. And I was a great distance from that tent, maybe 30, 40, 50 feet. And I could see every detail inside that tent. So it would be very easy for someone to take a shot through those clear plastic.
So they locked everyone out of this ballroom who had reservations to set them up in a tent outside.
Right.
Only so they could have clear access to assassinate
To
this
assassinate.
person.
The entity that speaks through this medium came to her at night, clairaudiently, and told her that she's to get out of there immediately because he cannot protect her while he's in the body as well as he can protect her outside the body. Just like when Reverend Hewitt went to Tampa and was driving that car, that entity met him, and he is so powerful that he stopped the car from moving. That's the kind of strength he has.
Wow.
So he could protect her
Right.
as long as he's not in the body. So she put on a wig and she went back to the airport and she took about 5 or 6 planes zigzagging across the country until she got home.
How horrible.
Yeah.
And what is this entity doing that's so bad to all these people who obviously want to meet this entity and experience this?
He's contradicting a lot of what's in this legends.
Exactly.
That's what he's doing.
Well, you know what? If people want to hear that, then isn't that appropriate?
No, seriously, Tina, this energy, if he really wanted a following now, he could come and within 1 month, he could have had 95% of all of the people in America following him. I'm not kidding you. 95%. That's a heck of a lot of people. Stop and think of that.
Now, Jesus didn't want to be worshipped.
No, he didn't want to be worshipped.
This entity doesn't want to be worshipped.
No. He just wants people to know the truth.
I know there's a lot here to talk about, but can you give me an example of a couple of the things that this entity does discuss or share or teach people?
Well, this particular entity teaches similar things that A1 does.
Yeah.
He teaches how to talk to the God within and to empower your own soul, because God is within. That's why you don't need a church to go communicate with God. All you need is a pair of blindfolds and sit on the floor. You don't need a cathedral. And he teaches us how to address the Lord God within your being and to empower it to do pretty much what you want, what you want to be able to do.
Okay. So now this entity who lived, you said 34,000 years ago?
Right.
That would be hard for people to believe that and understand that.
This particular entity lived back when Lemuria was in existence. And people think that's a mythological place, but it really did exist. And he talks about he was a great leader of an army. He was not a very spiritual person, but at one point he was wounded, and a big sword was rammed right through his stomach. And it took him 7 years to recover from that. And it was in that course of the 7 years that he evolved spiritually. And by the time he decided he wanted to leave the earth plane, he had evolved so much that he was able to ascend and take his body with him. So we only ever had one earth life existence. He never reincarnated like most people do. And but he became an ascended master, and therefore had all this knowledge. But he had such love for humanity that he's come back to try to teach us how to follow in his footsteps in order to ascend.
Okay.
You know, when I checked him out down in Tampa, Florida, and I went to other places to check him out, and I've checked other people out too, and then I brought everything back here to share with my people, you see? Well, the first time I did that, a lot of my people, they left the church, started all kind of rumors about me that, you know, that I'm following this stupid woman and all of this business. You'd be surprised at the rumors they started about me. You know, that I'm following this when I'm following this. And I mean, the ignorance coming from some of these people that, my God, I put on pedestals. You know what I mean? I wouldn't do such a thing. If I didn't go check these people out, I wouldn't bring this back to them. I mean, they left me like rats jumping off of a burning ship.
A lot of people get very used to a belief system, and then when you start to push the boundaries of that belief system, they get uncomfortable and they want to leave. This entity that we're speaking about is one who always is pushing the boundaries of knowledge and what people believe. So therefore, you need to be kind of flexible and be able to handle that kind of thing.
Okay.
Two entities have told me the same story. They said at one time, we're going back many, many thousands of years ago, and this is not in a history book, by the way. They said that this planet that we live on now, at one time, going all the way back, it was completely covered with clouds, just like Venus is, completely covered with clouds. And that was when the those animals,
Dinosaurs?
the dinosaurs were created by the gods through thought.
Okay.
And there was no such thing as competition, but then the gods got into competing with one another, who can create the biggest animal, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so they created animals that were so big, and so the animals started eating all the forest, and there was nothing else to eat but their own creators, which were the gods. You understand?
Let me just interrupt for 1 second, because I'm sure some viewers are annoyed with your use of the word gods. In the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 26, in the process where God is creating things, it says that then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish in the sea," and so forth. So in this book, it's God is referred to in the plural because it was many. In the Hebrew, Elohim is a plural noun. It's the gods. So when Reverend Hewitt uses that term, it's the same term that the Bible uses, but we've been programmed to think there's only one.
Okay. Thank you. Now continue. The dinosaurs were eating their creators.
The dinosaurs were created by the gods.
Okay.
Each person could create. Going all the way back, people were able to use all of this. Today, people use only about 10%. There's a few people on the planet that use up to 1/3 of this.
When you use 100% of your brain, the human body does not disease, it doesn't age, and they can ascend. And it's very interesting, Tina, that recently I've come across a book called Shamans, Healers, and Medicine Men. The author's name is Holger Kalweit, and in there they talk about the Aborigine people who have this mythology when people and the Eskimos also, and the people had use of their brain, and no one would get sick, and everybody lived in peace, and people used to ascend. Everything that this entity was talking about is in the mythology of the Eskimos.
Really?
Yes.
So many things that you had heard, you were able to confirm
Yes.
to be truth.
When I was a kid, because I was rejected by the family and all of that business because of that stupid religion that my people were involved with, because don't forget I was possessed by the devil, and they used to teach, the people, scare the devil out of him, and everybody knew that. They all tried to do that because I was possessed by the devil and everything else. And so I would go in the woods. I spent more time in the woods. And then the first movie I ever saw was a Tarzan picture, so I became, in my fantasy, I became a Tarzan. So I learned to go from tree to tree, like a monkey, And so spending so much time in the woods, it was a good time for me to communicate with somebody. I heard the voices all the time and everything else. But the one thing that I heard a great deal when I was a kid, I heard a lot of things about the worlds way, way back. And when they said that this planet that we're on now was surrounded by clouds, and how that they created these animals, what were they?
The dinosaurs?
The dinosaurs.
Right.
And so after they had been eating all the greenery and everything else, there was nothing left but the people who created them, and they could run pretty fast, faster than the man could run. And so they decided they had to create something to get rid of them. And they created these laser light. They created laser guns, actually, and they had to do that and shoot the animal through the head. They couldn't shoot them through the body because they were big as a house. And but they had never seen the sun because the sun never shines.
Right, and some of the lasers of light penetrated the clouds, and the
That's
clouds,
right.
the
So
clouds started to rain for the very first time. And that's what caused the great flood with Noah. And all the cultures have a flood story. And this, so when the waters came down and flooded the earth and filled the oceans, and then we no longer had a permanent cloud cover, and it changed the climate.
So we don't have a lot of time left. What I wanted to clarify is that this information that you're sharing right now with our viewers is very much what this entity is teaching, has taught, and shares with people who visit him. In other words, that's where a lot of this came from.
Yes.
Okay.
There's been many people that have sinned. They're still in the other dimension, and they're trying to feed it to the people. They're trying to feed it to the people here in order to feed it to the masses. But a lot of times, people like myself and like Sidney, we're silenced in some way or other. There's people right here in this area telling people, because I get the feedback, don't believe a word they say. Don't believe a word they say.
I have a quote from a book that was written by someone who'd had a conversation and dialogue with this entity. And this quote I'd like to share with our viewers, because I believe that this quote is really the foundation for our show with respect to sharing knowledge with people versus people understanding beliefs. And quite often people that I talk to will say, yeah, well, you believe in that and I believe in this. But there really is a difference between knowledge and wisdom and belief. So I'm going to read this, and I think I'm going to wrap up the show after that. This entity is saying, a good thing to know. Never believe in anything, never. That is convincing yourself of something you have yet to know and understand through experience. And belief is very dangerous, because in belief, you are placing your life, your attitudes, and your trust in something which has not found itself as a truth within your being, which causes you to become very vulnerable. And in that state of vulnerability, you can be manipulated, accursed, damned, and can lose your life, all because of belief. Know whatever it is you wish to know. And you can do that simply by asking for the understanding and then listening to the feelings within your being. Always trust the wisdom of your feelings. Never go against them, and try to force a belief upon yourself that doesn't feel good inside.
Exactly.
And with that, I'd like to wrap up tonight's show. And I want to remind our viewers, this is a phenomenal book. It is also a foundation of this television program. And if you like this show, you're going to love the book. My First Encounter with an Angel, Revelations of Ancient Wisdom. Buy it. For information on how to buy it, purchase it. At the end of the show, there's a phone number that you can call. We also have an email address. And with that, I'd like to say thank you to Sidney Schwartz and
Welcome.
Reverend Carl Hewitt.
My pleasure.
And thank you, viewers. Until next time, be well.